I have a tab.
Hey, everybody. You showed up.
Hello.
At least I think you showed up. We could be talking to an empty room right now. It does say 0 up there, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it looks like there's 2 waiting.
So, but anyway, welcome to This Is Going to Be Terrible. If by the end of this you thought it was terrible, don't say we didn't warn you. So I guess I'll introduce myself first. My name is Robert. Over to my right, but maybe your left. I'm not sure. Who's over there? Who's that guy?
Right.
That way. I'm James. And then down below me,
The foundation of this trio, I'm Nathan.
So welcome everybody again to our show, our podcast here. So we got a couple range of topics here. We'll go through mainly just talking about why we're here doing this podcast, and then we'll roll along and see how this goes. So I hope you guys enjoy the ride. So I guess we'll get started with some biographies, get you guys to get to know us a little bit. Anyone care to volunteer to go first?
I volunteer as tribute.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm Nathan. I'm originally from Florida, like the 2 above me, but I've since moved to Tennessee. Been up here for actually over a decade now. Currently live with my fiance and our 2 cats. I've known James and Robert since we went to high school together down in Florida. I'm a pretty big fan of sci-fi. If the Darth Vader helmet in the top left corner of your screen wasn't a big hint to that. And I love board games too. And I can't wait to be able to start doing my own Let's Plays of board games on my own channel. But yeah.
And we may do some on this channel too. It's a combination of things, right?
Maybe.
James
is my name.
Yes.
Don't wear it out.
James. Is it
one? I thought a dress. Like you put on a dress that says James, and that's what they mean.
I don't know. I would.
I don't know. Would it be form-fitting?
For you, yes. You have the form-fitting body. Me, no.
Well, very good.
Here.
Anyway, I am James. I, again, have known Robert since middle school, Nathan since high school, for better or for worse. And yeah, I enjoy me some Star Wars as well. I'm pretty sure that's probably how Nathan and I got together.
It definitely was, yeah.
Honestly, middle school is far enough removed that I don't recall first meeting Robert. He was just kind of there. He's in the sky, you trying to remember? Yeah.
I'm just there, and I insert myself into people's lives.
And you're going to watch your phrasing on that. So, anyway, yeah, I've been at my same job for 17 years at a shipping company. So, the advantage of being stuck in one place, I mean, employed at the same place for long enough, it's not that bad of a job. And it gives me plenty of free time to do whatnot with my wife and my daughter and my cat. There's a dog somewhere too, but we don't talk about him.
Dogs are better than cats, so you should talk about him.
Agree to disagree.
We'll change this whole thing just to have a debate on how dogs are better than cats. Don't tempt me.
I mean, do you really want to?
We'll go there. You want to go there?
We'll do that next time.
Because technically, the dogs outnumber the cats maybe here. Wait, no, you have 2 cats. He has 1 cat, so that's 3 cats and 2 dogs. Oh man.
Right, but if we're going by host votes, I can gather where Nathan is going.
Sure. Vote dog. Vote dog, or I will come and find you.
Again, phrasing, watch it.
Right. Don't threaten me with a good time.
Let's keep it clean, gentlemen. Okay.
You started.
Let the audience make their own inference. So I'm Robert. I prefer dogs over cats all the time. And so I've lived in Florida my entire life. just like James said, known him since middle school, known Nathan since high school. We all just kind of clicked. We're into the same thing: Star Wars, comics, Marvel, DC, all the nerdy type stuff. Pretty typical. No surprises there. I work in IT. I've been basically working IT my entire life, and I currently work in healthcare IT, and I enjoy it very much. So yeah. All right. So moving on to our next order of business here. This is a podcast, and we'll get to why we're doing all of this in a minute. But I kind of wanted to start it with what are some of our favorite podcasts? And those that are watching, if you want in the chat, you can put there what your favorite podcasts are, and as they come up here, we can give it a shout out here. So since Nathan went first in the little bit of the auto bio there, Nathan, what are some of your favorite podcasts?
It's funny that I go first because I also have the fewest number of podcasts because I don't listen to podcasts. I've never really had a job where I was able to just kind of zone out the tasks at hand and listen to whatever. So I've always had to be able to be part of the job and what's going on all the time. This past couple of years, that has changed, and I found a little trick with my work computer to where it's preferable for me to watch YouTube. So I'm listening to a lot of YouTube channels, but they're not really podcasts. So I don't know if that counts or not. I probably should have asked that beforehand.
I mean, it's a channel that puts out regular content. So you could almost treat it like a podcast. You are consuming it similar to a podcast. So
theoretically, it might also show up in a podcast feed of just audio form.
It may very well, and I've just never gotten around to looking at it because, like I said, I found a workaround with YouTube specifically, so I take advantage of that.
James?
Well, again, I work at a shipping company and have been there for so long that it is very monotonous. So I get a solid, 4 to 5 hours a night where I can just kind of zone out to do whatever I'm going to listen to. Sometimes it's podcasts, sometimes it's audiobooks, because support your local library, they have free digital copies of audiobooks. Who knew? The people that work there probably.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite podcasts?
Lately it's been a lot of some RPG, real plays, some D&D things. Otherwise, usually weekly, there's a couple different video game podcasts that I'll listen to. I think there was one that had been connected to the Kotaku website, but then branched off because the writers left and decided they still wanted to do their podcast. That one is Triple Click. But other than that, I know there's the Game Informer podcast, which fills some time. And yeah, the D&D one I usually listen to is, I think the long form title is Not Another D&D Podcast, usually just abbreviated to NADPod.
Cool. Some of my favorite podcasts, Waveform podcast by Marquez Brownlee. He does a lot of tech reviews and stuff on YouTube, and then he's got a podcast where he covers different tech topics. Corridor Crew. That's another great channel. They've got a few channels out there, but they have a podcast too, and they're just hilarious to listen to. Every episode is a bit different. Sometimes they're talking about things that are specific to cinematography. They work in film and digital effects specifically, so they may talk about that. But then, like this episode that they released the other day, they basically just kind of ran through a bunch of philosophical arguments and then picked sides, and then kind of had like little debates over which side they chose. And so it's pretty neat because every episode is a bit different. It's not always just about what their company does. And what other podcasts I subscribe to? There was one other. Security Simplified, since I work in IT. Security Simplified is another great one led by Mark Liberty from WatchGuard, because they talk a lot about cybersecurity. So if anybody's in here that works in IT, definitely recommend giving that a listen to. Lots of great information in that podcast. I don't listen to a podcast as much today because I'm more work from home now because of the pandemic. And so, but before my commute to work is usually about an hour. So I would listen to podcasts to and from work, and I could consume them a lot more. Now I find myself kind of playing catch up most of the time. Whenever I go do grocery runs and stuff like that, then that usually takes a little bit. So then I'll listen to podcasts whenever I'm doing that. So that will segue into the next topic, which is what is it about those podcasts that we like or dislike? And I kind of said one of those things with Quarter Crew that they've got a channel that's got a specific purpose, right? They are a digital effects company. They work in the film industry, while their podcast may cover topics, it's not always just about those things. They add a little bit of flavor, throw in some spice, salt and pepper there, and throw in a different episode where they maybe talk about something that isn't specific to their industry. Like I said, they had those little mini philosophical debates, and I thought that was pretty neat. So I like a podcast that kind of mixes it up every now and then. It's not always the exact same thing, because after a while you just kind of get bored with the content, and throw in something a little new every now and then.
Every once in a while, it just becomes in one ear, out the other. Yeah.
And so things that I dislike about the podcast that I follow, that sometimes they can get a little monotonous. It's the same thing over and over again, and then you kind of find yourself, you get to the end of the podcast and you didn't even know, you can't even repeat what it is that they talked about because you were just kind of tuned out. So yeah. Nathan, you don't listen to new podcasts, right? But the YouTube feeds that you have, channels you've been listening to, though, what do you like or not like?
Most recently, I've been listening to Numberphile a lot, and so the channels I've been listening to have been like heavy into math and physics and trying to explain the world around us a little bit more, and even like kind of silly things like Matt Hatz with the game theory, movie theory, now food theory that just started this past week. It just going into the science of things and understanding why things work. It's always, I love that about science fiction, especially the ones that I enjoy. There's always some actual science behind it. It's not just like space magic that's thrown in there. So anything that can like teach me things, even if it's something that I probably should have known from 10 years ago, teach me now. You never stop learning. So.
Cool. James?
I mean, for the most part, a lot of these podcasts, again, they're just there to fill the time because of monotonous job. A lot of it, like the people that play the D&D one, a lot of their players are primarily came from, which one was it? Was it? No, they came from College Humor before they were laid off, I believe. I think it was that. So they're, have been schooled in like improv and stuff. So that also helps with role-playing games like that, but it means that they also get to add a lot of humor into it. Otherwise, the primary video game one I listened to, Triple Click, I again had been listening to them since they were on Kotaku, and they started, I want to say, right around when Destiny 1 came out. So we're talking like 2014, 2015. So it been listening to them a while, and it's just after you listen to something for that long, you just kind of feel a connection, I suppose. Like you're used to hearing them every week, and it's nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about the Corridor Crew, is that I've been watching so much of their content on YouTube that when I discovered they had the podcast, like I was instantly drawn in, and then listening to it, it was like you kind of feel like you're almost part of the group. You're in there listening to the podcast. Like when they were doing that philosophical debate episode, like I was sitting there yelling at the stereo in the car, like, no, this is why you're wrong, or, no, that doesn't make any sense. And
I'm pretty sure the stereo itself was not wrong, though.
No, of course not.
So you should not yell at it.
Well,
that's
it's
very
my
rude,
stereo,
Robert.
and I'll do what I want to it, James.
Again, phrasing.
You know that James isn't a stereo, and you're not allowed to yell at him, right?
What?
James is not a stereo, as in like a car stereo, and so you're not allowed to yell at him like you were yelling at your car stereo.
No, I mean, he's a person. I would never do that.
Right.
You, on the other hand.
What's that?
You, on the other hand.
I'm a car stereo.
All right. So since we talked a little bit about the podcast we like, what we dislike about them and such, why start our own podcast now? Why are we even here?
Well, have you looked outside lately? You can't.
We're not supposed to go outside. I thought that's what they said, to stay inside at all times.
We even got the blinds
Yeah,
closed.
unfortunately, except shipping job. So that's essential. So
Healthcare
Yeah.
IT, essential.
Healthcare essential.
Well, for me, why start our podcast now? This kind of was born out of some things we were doing with Nathan's channel. We're doing a Let's Build, and he was building a Lego set, and we just kind of were sitting there talking and whatever, and just having a good time, just good laughs. And it had been so long since the three of us had kind of just hung out and talked and whatever about everything. That
I'd say it was at least a time. Let's not quantify good time here.
Well, I had a good time. But after doing that once or twice, and then thinking about making this a regular thing, it just kind of, the thought crept in my head about, what if we just press record on most of the conversations that we have? Would people find that interesting? Would they want to join along? Just like, when I listen to Corridor Crew, like I'm interested in what they have to talk about, and, would somebody feel the same way about the things we have to talk about? So this is kind of born out of that. We have a good time when the three of us hang out. Let's hit record and see what happens.
It reminds me of that time when you and I took that trip to DC area, and we drove up there, and you actually bought like a little miniature webcam to put in the back seat to have forward, because it was the intent to record our conversations, but we had some road trouble, and that kind of killed the mood. But that was all born out of, we were hanging out late one night, like it was 2:00 in the morning, and we were just kind of like just driving around, and it was like everything we said became an innuendo, and we could not stop laughing at just how silly and goofy it was and everything. And even got to the point of like, okay, we calmed down, we stopped laughing, and then we went to say something, and that was an innuendo. It's like everything we were going to say was an innuendo, and we could not stop. And so I think back to that night and how crazy it was, and that it's now 15 years since that happened, and we're finally getting around to recording our conversations.
Right. I also think about the national anthem.
Oh,
where we were driving somewhere.
You're at
a
UCF.
Movie or something. I don't remember what it was. We were all headed somewhere. The four of us in the car. The three of us here, but Chris was in the car with us at that time. And I don't know who started it. Somebody just started belting the national anthem, and then we all just kind of joined in, and it sounded to us like stadium performance worthy in a sense. And when we finished, we're like, that would have been really nice if we had like hit record on our phone or something at that moment to at least capture that moment.
Right.
And so I think for me, and I think that's what Nathan is saying here too, is, starting this podcast kind of born out of that, wanting to capture those moments, those moments that we can't get out of our heads because they were either too funny or too profound, that, we want to kind of immortalize it here in this podcast. James?
So now, obviously, all those moments are going to show up after we hit end.
Yes. That's typically how it works. It never happens when the camera's working. I cannot for the life of me record my daughter doing anything, because the moment she sees the camera recording, she stops doing it. And then when I put the phone away, she starts doing it again.
Yeah.
It's that predator-prey instinct, I guess.
Sure.
Makes sense.
Deer in the headlights.
So why are you here, James? Why do you want to start this podcast with us?
I mean, I think you all blame me a little bit.
I don't blame you. I think you blamed yourself yesterday when we were discussing this.
Well, I was the one who sort of made the first comment about it, and this was all in one of the previous streams. I think I had made some sort of backhanded comment about a podcast, and let's see, how did it go? Then Robert ruminated on, what would we do as a podcast? What would we call it? And as Nathan is trying to come up with a title, he's prefacing it with, okay, this is going to be terrible. And I'm like, wait, stop. That's what it's going to be called. Yeah. And then there was some laughter, but who cares about laughter?
Right. Nobody's here to laugh.
Who cares about laughter?
Yeah.
And then, of course, it just continued to snowball from there. And here we are.
Yeah, right. 2 weeks later, something like that.
Basically, I think it was one of those, prior to doing these streams with Nathan a few weeks ago, we had not really conversed a while. It's not so much that we had fell out of touch. It's just Robert has kids. I have kid. Nathan is a cat dad. So we've been busy. And pandemic has also made things a little bit difficult to kind of like schedule. And then there's also the distance because Nathan is in Tennessee.
Yes.
And then Robert is also way out in the boondocks, you know.
Yeah. I live pretty far away from James. Not horribly far, but too far to want to drive all the time to meet up and do things.
Well, to be fair, the way you drive sometimes. Oh, wait.
Yes. So what do we want out of this podcast? What are we here for? Why? What do we want to get out of this? I think for me, what I want out of this podcast is, just to have a good time and for people to enjoy that time with us, to just hang out, discussing whatever seems interesting at the time. And just to spend more time with my friends and more time with the community, talking about things that interest us.
I'm definitely here for more selfish reasons. I've noticed lately I've been having a hard time like formulating thoughts and making things coherent. And I realize it's basically a skill I never really developed because so much of my schooling was done through writing essays and writing articles and never really talking as much. And so coming up with like logic strings on the fly, really been like not good at. That's quite apparent right there.
I was like, everybody listening completely agrees with you.
So it's like, forcing myself to get out there and talk and like not having a script written out beforehand, but trying to do things on the fly. Like having notes is fine, of course, but like just trying to actually formulate my thoughts and make them more coherent, I think is only going to help me. And, doing it live is just going to force me to be on the edge instead of just trying to like take a step back and remove myself from in this case, the audience, but it's not always an audience. It could just be one other person.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm here to develop speaking skills.
James, speak good, want speak better?
TLDR.
I mean, I don't know. Well, just backtracking slightly for a second. There are 9 people watching according to the YouTube app, Nathan. So there is an audience of sorts, although it was at 10 a few minutes ago. So I think, Robert, if you have those hunter-killer drones ready, we need to go find someone.
Yes. Eliminate target.
Well, wait, no. You just need to recollect them. If you eliminate them, they will never be a viewer in the future again. You need to present them the opportunity.
But if they're no longer living, then we can like stable them to a chair and like wire their eyes open so they're always watching the stream.
That would be terrible.
Yeah.
So then that's a good segue. Is it going to be that?
Is there ever a good segue?
I think this is
Those
a good.
things just crash terrible.
No, that's the driver. It's always the driver. Just like Tesla, it's always the driver. The car, not the scientist.
I wouldn't even think of the science. I was thinking of the car, the Tesla, and it's like, but it's a self-driving car. So if it's always the driver, then it is the car. So.
So is this going to be terrible? I hope not. Right? I mean, if it was terrible, then we would have. If it was terrible, we wouldn't have 9 people, and I guess one person found it terrible since they left. But no, I mean, we don't think it's going to be terrible. And then that kind of leads into really what this show will kind of be about in its regular format is, we're going to discuss various topics, whether it be video games, movies, TV, Star Wars, comics, Marvel, what have you, current events, things of that nature. And we'll get into some of that examples of that here in a little bit. But the idea, or at least the topic of the channel, will be that we will discuss various topics and then decide whether or not this thing that is coming or that exists, deciding whether or not it is terrible, right? So for an example in a minute, we're going to talk about Halo Infinite and that horrible gameplay trailer that came out last Thursday, and talk about whether or not we think that game is going to be terrible. And so the thing that the title of the channel being "This is going to be terrible" is born out of a joke, like James was telling earlier. James suggested about starting a podcast. Nathan made suggestion of a name. He said, "This is going to sound terrible, but," and then James cut him off and said, "Okay, that's your choice for the name of the podcast," and it stuck. And then kind of the topic evolved from the topic, or the main theme of the show kind of evolved from there. Were you going to say something, James?
I just have to say, you're already kind of coloring your opinion there by calling the Halo trailer terrible.
Right?
Yeah.
You all know where I'm going with this. So we'll see. Nathan and James will be a surprise, I guess. So no, I mean, we don't think this is going to be terrible. We hope it's not terrible. We hope that we enjoy it. Hey, we're back at 10 again. Actually, that guy heard us and came back. He was like, no, call off the drones. Call off the drones. I'm coming back. But no, we don't.
Drones? Are those Jewish drones?
All right, so James is
and
now
we are canceled. Hey, yeah. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Muting James. No, again, we hope this isn't terrible. We hope everybody's enjoying themselves. And we will talk about things and decide whether or not, and you included in the comments can tell us whether or not you think the things we're talking about are terrible or not. So, all right. So then let's talk about Halo Infinite and this gameplay trailer. Have the two of you had an opportunity to see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. What were your thoughts? We all know what I thought. So,
well, no, you go ahead and expand on it.
Sure. So, if you watch the progression of the trailers at various releases like E3 2018, 2019, and then now this game showcase thing on Thursday here in 2020, between 2018 and 2019, you see an increase in the look of the game, right? The graphics look a lot better. There, you have the initial first trailer that looks great, and they're always going to polish it up. But then the next one stepped it up even further and just had this bit of realism in there that we are expecting from next gen consoles. Right. But we haven't seen gameplay, and that's the thing everybody wants to see. And so when Microsoft says we're going to show you the gameplay, you're going to love it, and we watch it, I was not terribly impressed. I felt like I was watching a trailer for Halo 4, for an older Halo 3, Halo 4. Now, some people made comparisons to Halo 3 because they're kind of moving back to some of the design and visual language of Halo 3, but I'm talking about quality of the appearance of the game. Just looked like we took a major step backward. All the other stuff is there. The gameplay itself, aside from the way it looks, is the way it appears visually, looks like it's going to be fun. It's got, the varied weapons. It's got new environments. It's got some of the same enemies we're used to with newer ones. They're throwing in some new mechanics with the grapple. Kind of feels like something they're stealing from other games because it's becoming popular, but whatever. It's going to spice it up a little bit. The gameplay experience looks fun. It looks Halo. And for that reason, I'm probably still going to pick up the game. But I'm worried about how this game will look because this is supposed to be a next-gen game. It's supposed to be, and this is from a studio created by Microsoft. It's supposed to be the best, their best of the best. You would expect Microsoft to make something that looked amazing when it's by them for their console. You wanted to show off what the Series X can do, and I feel like this is failing the Series X miserably.
Mm-hmm.
Now, have you looked at it much, Nathan? Like anything beyond just looking at the trailer itself?
I'm not sure I understand your question. I'm sorry.
So we have the 9-minute gameplay trailer demo footage. Have you looked at anything like anything beyond that, discussions of it?
I looked up a couple this morning, trying to gather my thoughts together and get evidence, get some support for my arguments. But I hadn't really read into them too much. Just kind of like I had a thought, and then it's like, okay, is there evidence to support this thought? There is. Okay, let me just kind of get that ready to reference. I'm not sure that's answering your question, though, to be honest.
Okay, and what are your thoughts then?
So just preface, up until the trailer released Thursday, I was aware of a Halo Infinity game being produced and in development and slated for the next generation of consoles, but I was not aware of any trailers actually existing for it yet. So as of Thursday, that's the first thing I ever saw about Halo Infinity or Infinite, whatever it's called. And then I had to go back and rewatch the 2018 and 2019 trailers and see what all the fuss was about, because, Robert and I talked about it a little bit, and then Jacob and I talked about it a little bit, and, I'm reading all these reviews online about people being disappointed. It's like, what's so disappointing about it? I mean, yeah, it didn't look great, but it didn't look terrible. But then going back and watching those other trailers, I see why people are mad. So my thoughts about it all is the phrase in-game trailer is very tricky, because we as gamers want to assume that is going to be a majority of what we are seeing while we're playing the game. That's what we're seeing when we're controlling Master Chief and having him run around the Halo rings and shooting the Covenant up and everything like that. That's the majority of what we are experiencing, and so we want the best graphics in that point. But in-game also refers to the full motion video, the cinematics, even the menu experience. So not knowing whether those first two trailers, whether they were supposed to actually be in-game, as in the player controlling and that's what's generated, or if they were actual just cinematics. It's unfair really to compare it that way, because I didn't see anything explaining what those first two trailers were or not.
Right. So I think part of it might be the word you're looking for might be in-engine.
Yes.
So I know a few months ago when Ubisoft was making their big to-do about, hey, we're going to have the first gameplay footage from the new Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And they hyped it up, and then it came out, and it was in-engine footage. It was a pre-rendered cutscene thing. So it was technically what akin to the graphics you would see in the game, but it was not gameplay footage. So
right.
A lot of people were not very happy about that. So the demo that came out on Thursday at the Xbox showcase for Infinite was a gameplay demo from everything that I could see. It even started up with a demo screen. I'm a little disappointed with their little game fest last week with 50 plus indie demos that they didn't want to throw up an Infinite demo, but the game's probably not going to be out for another 4 months. I can kind of forgive that. They don't want to put something up that, especially if the game is going to be semi-open world, they don't want to probably throw people that this soon.
Makes sense.
Because what I did, I rewatched it earlier this afternoon, and then conveniently up in the little sidebar, there was a video, and we'll probably throw a link up to it in the description later on or something. There was a video from Digital Foundry that talked about their analysis of it and whether they thought, if they agreed with everybody else, that the graphics are flat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody can kind of just like, if you know Digital Foundry, they go by usually kind of like frame by frame. They're big into the visual effects stuff. They analyze this stuff to the T.
Mm-hmm.
And they pretty much said it came down to like, it was a poorly lit demo. Mm-hmm. That depending on, a lot of it was in shadows. So it was not great for showing the texture for whatever models they have. Because in another article, this demo was not actually being run on any kind of test Series X unit. It was being tested on a PC that had specs that were similar to the Series X.
Okay.
So it wasn't even on the actual Microsoft console.
I had a hunch about that, whether or not it was even running on a Series X. I felt like maybe the excuse was the console that they had didn't work and they had to fall back on something else for the showcase. And so then they ended up, using a PC, or I thought maybe even an Xbox One, right? Because isn't Infinite supposed to be backwards compatible or whatever?
Correct. There is going to be a version of it for Xbox One. When it launches, their big selling point has been you can play it on either the One, the Series X, or the PC at launch.
And so that's
going back to the Digital Foundry thing. It seems to be, they think, a lighting issue because it's a 18-minute long video, and it's probably worth a watch if you want to see their comparison. It shows that a lot of the stuff is in shadows, and it compared it to the fact that everything they talked about, this demo did not have any kind of ray tracing, which in the next generation is going to be, I guess, the big selling point. So without the ray tracing on, they pulled up a comparison of texture models for the latest Metro Exodus game, and how with ray tracing off, the model does not look great, but when you turn it on, it just snaps. So they are hoping there will be a ray tracing patch coming out not too long. I'm not sure how long. Microsoft hasn't said, but there will be a ray tracing patch that will come out for free for Infinite after launch. So that will theoretically fix some issues. But yeah, the general consensus online is that things look very kind of flat, kind of plasticky on some of the alien armor. So it was not the best showing by Microsoft. It could have been better, but I don't think that it was terrible. Mostly, also, I'm coming from the perspective of I don't have as fancy a TV as a lot of people might be. So I'm more focused on, and have always been focused on with any games, not even just this Halo one, do I have a stable frame rate? And will it play fine?
Agreed.
Because if they can shoot for getting 60 frames a second consistent, but even if it's only at 1080p, I'll take that. Or whatever the step is between 1080 and 4K. I'm not as good with those numbers, so I couldn't tell you. It's 14 something, I think.
I have no clue, to be honest. But
I'm going to give it a watch. For those watching, Jay's recommending it. I would definitely give it a watch. If you're into Halo Infinite, give it a watch there, because it will certainly shed some light on some things. So then, is Halo based on the gameplay trailer? Do we believe Halo Infinite is going to be terrible?
So before you cast your vote, also, in addition to the video, I'd seen a couple of interviews with people at Microsoft, and there was one that they talked to IGN, and they talked briefly about some of the villain and story details. So if you're wary of spoilers, probably don't go and look at that article. But the main sticking point I saw in it, it talked about how big they're aiming for the game to be. And they don't want to call it open world, but if you watch the gameplay demo, you see at one point they bring up a map screen, and it leaves you pretty open as to what objectives you want to do in what order. And a big point of the game is you're going to be exploring this Halo ring. So they're saying that it is going to be probably about twice the size of 4 and 5 combined.
Oh wow!
So if they can do something like that, and again have it stable 60 frames per second, whatever resolution they want to settle for, I would even be happy with a thing this generation, especially with when the Xbox One X came out. There were a lot of options in games of, okay, do you want to focus on the 4K version, or would you like to have a stable frame rate but have lower resolution, which is usually the option I would pick. I want to say I think the newest Gear of War has had that, and it works great. It's nice and stable. It may only be at 1080p, but it's buttery smooth, and that's great.
So, to cast our votes, I think there's enough time. I don't think Halo Infinite is going to be terrible. And I may be a little biased because I'm a Halo fan. I've played all 5 Halo games, and I've enjoyed all 5 of them, regardless of how people may or may not like Halo 5. I enjoyed it. So,
and you do also have Game Pass, so
I do.
It's not also going to cost you any extra to try it.
So
because another thing at the game conference that they had is they made sure to point out a lot of their first party games that they talked about will be available day one when they launch for free on the Game Pass. So if you're already subscribed to it with Microsoft, which seems to be a pretty great deal, you will have access to these games, and it's not going to cost you any extra other than what you're paying for the Game Pass.
Mm-hmm. Nathan, your vote? Do you think it's going to be terrible?
I think it's going to be underwhelming. So I don't think it's going to be terrible, but I don't think it's going to be great. If in fact, I looked up the Metacritic scores for the mainline Halo games, and Halo Combat Evolved came out to a Metacritic score of 97, and Halo 5 Guardians had a Metacritic score of 84, if I remember correctly. So I have a feeling it's going to be in the low 80s for the Metacritic score. So it's like, okay, it'll probably be playable and even probably slightly enjoyable. It'll probably even feel like Halo, but I don't expect it to wow me. I don't expect it to be like, I remember I was replaying a little bit of Halo 4 a couple days ago, and just seeing some of those cutscenes, especially with what's his name? Latsky, I think it is, the commander who's helping you when the captain is trying to kill Cortana. Just the way he looked and the in-engine graphics as you're playing was phenomenal. And, of course, the gunplay was so great. And Halo 4 was a wow Halo. You know, it really upped the bar of everything. And that was made for 360, Xbox 360, however many years ago. And it's just kind of like knocking my socks off. I'm not anticipating that with Infinite. I'm anticipating it to be more like Halo 5, I guess. So...
James?
Part of it might be that a lot of people feel that they kind of dropped the ball with 5. Not just because of the fact that they had these split protagonists playing between Chief and,
Locke.
no offense, the other guy?
Spartan.
I don't remember his name right now.
I just recently replayed it, so Spartan Locke.
That's right. Like I said, the other guy. Which is nothing against his character, it's just... everybody went in wanting to play a Master Chief game, and they had sort of the same reaction they did when 2 came out, of being a little disappointed that, oh, we have this other character we have to play through for, what's that, over half the game? Well, okay. So the campaign in 5 was kind of just a little blah. Mm-hmm. Also, if I recall, it's been a while since I played through 5, but the boss fights in it... Halo's never been super great on boss fights to begin with, but the Warden fights were just a slog.
Yeah.
But so a lot of people are kind of disappointed by 5, and thankfully they've taken their time. Instead of rushing out a new Halo, say 2 years after the fact, they've kind of waited. Part of that also being they had to devote some resources to fixing the Master Chief Collection, which they have. They've added Reach even. I haven't gotten to play Reach yet in the collection, but I hear it turned out great. Mm-hmm. But so that's given them extra time to... Halo 5 came out, I want to say 2015? Short of looking it up.
Uh-oh.
I think that's right. Uh-oh. Did we lose him?
Maybe. Looks like he's frozen there for a second.
Maybe he's mid-thought.
He's thinking really hard.
He is. I can't even tell from the reflection of his glasses like we could the other day.
No.
Yeah.
I think we lost him. Not a big deal. We'll get him back here in a minute.
Yeah.
Wait. He's back? No?
No. Wait.
And
James, hi.
Sorry, internet decided to try to conk out on me. I'm a different band now.
Yeah.
As I was saying, so we had Infinite 5, which extra time to put into the development of Infinite. Again, in the IGN interview I read, it sounds like they are not aiming to have an Halo Infinite 2 at any point. Infinite is going to be their platform for the next 10 years, hopefully, is what they're thinking. They don't want to call it a live service game a la Destiny or anything like that, but any kind of story developments will be using the Infinite as their, jumping off point.
Didn't they do something?
That might either be hopefully free, seasonal, hey, here's some more story type content. Kind of like in Halo 4, we had these Spartan Ops.
Right.
That would be a nice thing again.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was gonna say, is that maybe they will do Spartan Ops, and that'll be how they carry it on. So,
and I actually really like that concept in Halo 4 with the Spartan Ops, and that you got to make your own Spartan 4 character to play as to continue on the story. And, it introduced new, well, not new, but like rearranged game maps and mechanics and everything like that. And it also revealed more storyline after the fact of the game. So I would not be opposed if they did it like that as opposed to a live service game. Not that I don't think 343 can't do a live service game, but me personally, I'm just burned out of live service games.
Cool. So, Infinite, terrible, not terrible. I'm going with not terrible.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's too early to tell. I don't think it's going to be terrible, but it is also at least 4 months away, so they're still going to be chugging along on it. I want to say one of their people made a comment along the lines of, given COVID and everything, all game development is kind of like, they're having to find the new normal for that. Mm-hmm. So they're coming out with new builds and new fixes for things. So it changes week by week. Mm-hmm. So they still have a number of months before it'll launch. So we shall see.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to our next topic here, one near and dear to my heart. Xbox Series X versus PS5 design choices. William is in the chat. He's kind of been throwing in some comments here and there, so I know he's a PS5 guy more than Xbox. So he may not care for the things that I have to say, or maybe he agrees with me. But let's pull up the graphic here so that people can see what we're going to be talking about. Because
the first thing I want to point out with the design choice is just to go with their names. I mean, who keeps coming up with the names for Microsoft's gaming consoles? I mean, how many X's and ones can you throw into a console name before it gets retarded? And I know it's a terrible word to say, but it is.
Well, it started with the Xbox 360 and hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
So Look,
I can sort of see what they were going for with the Xbox One. They envisioned it as the all-in-one, your cable, TV, game console thing. Mm-hmm. That was a little misguided, and it's obvious by the fact that over the years, when management has changed, they've been like, all right, let's cut off all the TV aspects, and it's just going to be a game thing, which it should have been from the beginning. But that was their original reasoning, I think, for it being the Xbox One.
Yeah, no, I got you.
So,
but go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. The design choices that they went here with the Series X and the PS5. Mm-hmm. The Series X, I don't have a problem with. I like the quote unquote refrigerator design choice. I think it looks clean. I like the clean lines. I like that the controller has barely changed, because honestly, for me, the Xbox controller, starting with the 360 and then just even better on the Xbox One, is the best console controller out there. It's the most comfortable. The button mappings make the most sense. All the buttons are within a good reach. Like, no matter what your hand size is, I feel like it just works great for everybody. So the fact that they just made very slight aesthetic changes to it, but then kept everything mechanically the same for the most part, is amazing.
Yeah.
The console itself, I think, looks good. I think it doesn't stand out too much. It's going to blend in with the rest of your equipment, because honestly, at the end of the day, it's not about what the box looks like, but what it can do. Mm-hmm. But if I'm going to have it standing out there, I like the matte black clean lines look. I like the concave top with the holes in the top that's there on like the Xbox One S and X now. I think it carries over some of that design language while making something new. And then we talked about this in previous discussions before, that, it kind of bridges the gap between Xbox and PC, which Microsoft seems to be trying to blur the lines with a little bit. Trying to capture some of those PC gamers by saying, look, ours is a PC too. Mm-hmm. So I like this look.
And there is something to be said about simplicity. There is the whole aesthetic with like uncut wood, let's say, or just a simple scenery somewhere. It doesn't have to be fancy with a bunch of bells and whistles. So I can definitely appreciate that aesthetic about it. My only real problem with the Xbox Series X, besides the name, is I don't like the cuboid shape, that it's like just a square that they elongated out. I would still prefer the more flat, wider than it is tall kind of look like the usual console is. So I'm kind of hoping that they went with this, not so much to blur the line between PC architecture and gaming console architecture, but maybe it actually helps with airflow better this way. I don't know, possibly. But I'm hoping it's more functional that they made it this way rather than the traditional flat than not.
How do you feel about the design of the Xbox Series X, James?
It's basically them sort of going along the lines of admitting that, yeah, this is basically a PC, so it looks like a PC tower.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't looked too much into it, like where all the guts of it are, but from what I've heard offhand, it sounds like it's probably more built like that for like cooling issues.
Mm-hmm.
Because this thing will probably generate some good heat when it's trying to pump through 60 frame 4K.
Hopefully,
so that's got to vent somewhere.
I hope it doesn't get too loud. I know I've had that problem with the Xbox One, not the S, but the original Xbox One. After a while, it gets really, really loud.
Mine's still kicking and doing great.
All right. So
whenever I see the PS5, let me see.
Hold on. I want to make a comment real quick that like I'm really hoping that this little thing here works as a ramp for the disk drive. So like I can create some kind of like Rube Goldberg machine where I can eject the disk and it will just roll out and then kind of fall off the table and bounce off of some like Solo cups or something and then like land inside of its CD case and then I can just close it. So I don't have to actually go up to the console and pull the disc out.
I was waiting to see that the ultimate goal of this machine you want to design is that it's going to like push a baby bottle into your youngest daughter's mouth or something like that.
Even better.
I mean, realistically, it's going to probably have some sort of grip on it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I really hope that's what that ramp is for. It's going to be some really, really fun times. But James, PS5.
Yeah, no, whenever I see the PS5,
what is this thing?
Sorry, I'm trying to share screen and it's yelling at me about Chrome, so it might not work.
Is this a Wi-Fi router? Is it an alien spaceship? Is it a one of Doofenshmirtz's coats?
Do you see it on your end, Robert?
I do not. I do not have your feature here. So while James is pulling that up, I think it's atrocious. Oh, there we go. Okay, let me pull up James. Oh yes.
Yeah, that's all I see whenever I see the PS5.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wait, how did that go? Darn, I'll have an appropriate size property.
What is it?
You don't.
Yeah. So I don't know what they were going for here. I just don't. It doesn't look practical. It doesn't look nice to me. These ports here on the front just also look really weird and out of place. Like I appreciate that there is USB-C because that's where everything is going. So working in IT, like everything should have USB-C, right, including iPhones. If Zach is here listening, Apple get with the program. And then they put a USB-A for everyone else that's got some older stuff. Hey, that's great, but like put that on the side or put it in the back. Like there in the middle, it looks like a belly button. It's like the PS5 is shirtless and it's got its belly button sticking out for the world to see, and it doesn't look attractive. And then the controller just takes what the console itself did and made it 10 times worse. Not to mention that I don't care for the the color scheme, like the white on black and blue. I guess the ratios are off for me because I like that color combination. I've rocked that color combination before, but not white being the primary color.
Right. White should be more of a trim color than the primary one. So,
so if they did the reverse, if they did this black and white in the center with the blue lighting, that might actually look better, I think. I still don't like the curves and this kind of like weird fin things at the top, the Doofenshmirtz's collar. I still don't like that, but it's less noticeable if it were black.
Right.
And then you could have the white there and then of course the CD drive just makes it even worse. The fact that I think maybe that also throws me off too, that it's not symmetrical. You look at the Xbox and with the exception of the CD drive being on the left, because putting it in the center would just look dumb, it's symmetrical. You slice it in half and it's the same on both sides. Like this PS5 doesn't have that. And with the CD drive, it's kind of got this the hump looks different. It comes over to like a straight edge here instead of a curved edge. So I'm not impressed. I'm not, and this is talking about the design language, the design choices of the console, not the console itself. I think it's going to be a powerhouse console and the games are going to look incredible. Right. They have, in my opinion, blown away Microsoft in all of their game demos so far that I've seen. I think the games look way better. And I think that's just been a PlayStation thing in general over the years, is that their exclusive titles have always looked amazing on their console. But the design choice here is terrible. IMO. James, inputs?
No, I think we summed it up pretty good.
So you guys agree? Don't have your own things to say?
Sorry,
I'm not likely to pick up the PlayStation anyway, just because I've been on the Xbox family for so long, and honestly, I don't even know that I'm going to pick up the Series X at launch. Part of this is because neither side have listed a price point yet, so don't know how much or if it'll be worth it yet.
Yeah. William is saying it's refrigerator versus Wi-Fi router. Looks like we lost Nathan here for a second. We'll hopefully bring him back here in a moment. Regarding my comment about inverting the colors, having black on the outside and white on the middle, there's Nathan. Hey, welcome back. I was reading some stuff in the chat that William says it's a refrigerator versus a Wi-Fi router.
Yeah,
regarding my black on the outside and white on the inside look, instead, Vicky is saying that then they would have just called it an Oreo.
Yeah.
So I guess you can't win, right? No matter what you do. The internet is cruel.
Did James get to finish his thoughts?
I mean, he agreed with us, and that he was probably not going to pick up the PS5 anyway, since he's mostly Xbox.
What do you mean us? Are you talking to yourself in third person now?
Yeah.
To kind of sum it up real quick again, it mostly comes down to neither side have offered a price, so I don't even know if I'm going to bother with any at launch, because first, I don't know what I'm saving towards, and it's still kind of early to say. I don't know.
Did you have any other inputs, Nathan, on the design choices for the PS5?
I do. For instance, everything I just said about simplicity with the Xbox Series X, I have a feeling that what happened is the two companies actually talked beforehand about aesthetics, and they just decided to go completely opposite. So as much as I like the Xbox Series X for its simplicity, I also do appreciate the PS5 in that they're trying to do, to me, I get the whole jokes with the popped collar and then, looking like a sandwich or a router or whatever. But to me, it reminds me of an airplane foil. It's soaring through everything, and it's just, going to pierce everything. So I get why people don't like the look of it. I don't really care for the look of it either, but it makes me think of it soaring more than it does just being some kind of alien or something. The controller I cannot defend. That is ugly. It's horrible. I've never liked the PlayStation controller. I've always preferred the Xbox controller, even the Duke one back on the original Xbox console. So sorry, PS5 controller, you're on your own. Sync. We don't want you. But I still appreciate the curviness, the fact that it's not just a block, that they actually put some thought into it to make it stand out a little bit. I don't like the color combination. I think possibly the black and then white on the inside would look a little bit better. Maybe even just stick with all black like they've done with the past 3 generations of consoles for PlayStation.
Yeah.
Why change things up and go with a different dichromatic look like that? I don't get it, but
yeah.
Go ahead.
At the end of the day, they're the ones making billions of dollars, and we're sitting here starting a fledgling podcast. So
right.
It's one of those it's like one of those defeatist arguments where it's like, yeah, well, who are you anyway? They're all the way to the bank while we sit here and argue about how disgusting this looks. People are still going to buy it.
I mean, I'm still probably going to get the PS5 over the Series X.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, honestly, design choices aside, it's not going to matter. It's going to come down to games. For most people, it should come down to games. Mm-hmm. If what you want to play available on the Xbox, great, get the Xbox. If you're into whatever's on the PlayStation, get the PlayStation. If you have the money to get both, sure, I guess, if you want, but not me, because money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. So, Xbox design link, the Xbox design choices. Terrible, not terrible?
Not terrible.
Not terrible. James?
Not terrible.
Okay. PS5.
Not terrible.
Terrible for me.
Yeah, it's not great. Not great.
Cool. So, and that's all we had for topics. I hope people kind of get the general idea, right? We're going to pick some things where, talking about gaming and Star Wars and what have you, any topics we'll be interested in, and we'll discuss our ideas and interests in it, and whether or not it's going to be terrible. And in this case, we agree, at least for this episode, I guess both are not going to be so terrible. So I'll go run through the comments real quick before we wrap up. Give people some shout outs. Davion Claiborne is here. He just dropped an album, by the way. It's on Google Play Music and YouTube Music and stuff. If you're into hip hop and rap, he's fantastic. Definitely give him a listen. Go hit up that new album. I've listened to a couple tracks, and it is not terrible. It is fantastic. William, hey, what's up? How you doing? He's excited for Fable. I did see that. I know some friends that would definitely be interested in that. I was never really into Fable, but what I saw in the showcase did look good. Mm-hmm. So he's excited for Fable.
I'm a big Fable fan of the first game, and I'll just leave it at that. I'm excited for this new Fable game that's coming out as well, even though they didn't really show much. The fact that they have another one in development, I'm still excited for, and I can't wait to see more. And I hope to God it's going to be on the PS5 as well.
Probably not.
Probably not.
You might need to hold your breath there.
Yeah.
We got Vicky here. Hey, Vicky. I don't know who Sailboat University is. He mentioned James, so I'm guessing he probably knows James. So, hey, James. Hey, James. Hey, Sailboat University. My dad showed up. Hey, Dad. My wife was in here. She voted dogs over cats. By the way, dogs winning in the comments over cats, by the way. Just saying. Who else is in
That's
here?
because the cats don't care. They know they're the best. They don't have to get up to vote.
To be fair, again, I don't think you want to bring the vote to the three of us.
No, well, of course not. We're not here to discuss that matter. I will continually bring up how dogs are better and then dodge the judgment. So that's it for people that made comments. I know that there are a couple other people in here because the people making comments are less than the number of people that were watching. But I want to say thank you to everybody for joining us for our first episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that when you sit down and discuss this with your family and you decide whether this was terrible or not, that it wasn't that terrible for you and that you'll be back the next time we do one of these. We're not sure of the release schedule yet. maybe bi-weekly, maybe every couple weeks. We're not entirely sure yet. This is still new for us. We're still working out some kinks, but we're excited to do this. And so just, check out the site webpage. This is going to be terrible.show, or the YouTube channel. We're also putting these up post the airing of the episode. We'll put them up for podcast, for your podcast app on Anchor, which should show up on Spotify, iTunes, and Google Podcasts as well. So you can catch us on there. Again, thanks for showing up, and I hope you guys had a great time with us. Any other closing remarks or anything from you guys?
No, just appreciate the people who watched. And again, we're going to send those hunter-killer drones at the people who decided to leave.
But not to kill you, just to hunt you. It'll stop and wait.
I'm just happy to be here.
We're just going to attach a screen to them and be like, you have to watch now.
You turn, it just follows you around. So, well, thanks again, everybody. We appreciate it. And see you next time. Bye.